to do it. And like I said, this is my first lesson as well. So I'm just saying I'm right where you are. I don't know anything more than you guys do. So having said all that, and it is coming through surround sound. So if we could reduce the talking amongst ourselves, just because it's going to be super, super hard for everybody to hear, because the surround sound's just not that great in this room, unfortunately. So as I found out through testing. So anyway, having said all that, I want to introduce Ryan. Ryan, I didn't bring my little introduction thing, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
No problem.
Okay, so go ahead.
Well, hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Ryan.
Here, I'll show you everybody. Here's everybody. Can you see everybody?
Hey, there you are.
Everybody wave, Ryan. Yay.
Well, thank you for joining this session. I appreciate it. Like Christy was saying, my name is Ryan Miller. I'm a customer success consultant at Turnitin. Basically, that means I do a lot of our trainings, both faculty and admin. I help with LMS integrations and everything that falls in between there. So this morning, we're going to kind of do a quick, brief 50-minute or so Turnitin training, a run through of how to create an assignment and how to take a look at Feedback Studio, and also getting into the student side of things so that we can take a look at how a student submits a paper and what kind of resources they have. And then lastly, just any questions. I'm hoping we have time at the end for questions, but let's keep this as interactive as possible. If you've got questions as I go, please feel free to stop me. If there's anything you'd like me to go into in more detail, I can do that. But I do know that we have about a hard stop at about 50 minutes or so. And I asked Christy to kind of give me a 5-minute heads up just so I can wrap things up if in case I'm going long. But like I said, please feel free to stop and ask any questions you'd like. Are there any questions before we get started?
That's it.
No? Okay. So 1 second here. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as you can see, we're inside a Moodle account and my instructor account. And I'm going to come down to my course here, which is Christy Test. And I'm going to open that up. And then, oh, I got to move this screen out of the way, excuse me. And then I'm going to go ahead and, oops, I had editing on already. I apologize. Make sure you turn editing on. Then I'm going to come down to whichever week. You can see I've already been in here and I already created a paper. This was so we can go back and take a look at some things that have already been submitted. But the first thing I'd like to do is just kind of show you how to create an assignment. And the first thing we're going to do is click on Add an Activity or Resource. And we're going to scroll down here to Turnitin Assignment 2. We're going to choose that and click Add. And it's going to give us a screen I'm sure you're pretty familiar with. We're going to give this a, we'll call this first draft. I'm not going to put anything in the summary yet, but obviously that's an option to you. We'll come down here. Our first option here is submission type. So any submission type, file upload, or text submission. So you can choose either if you just want it to be a file upload or maybe a text submission or any of those submission types. You also have the ability to create an assignment with parts. So you can see here I have one part. If I change this to a 2, it automatically adds a second part down here. So if you wanted to create an assignment that had first draft, second draft, final draft, you could make it in parts, or you could actually just make a whole new assignment for a first draft or a second draft. But you do have that option with parts. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 1. Next, we have maximum file size. You can see here 40 megabytes is our largest, but if you want to make it a smaller file size, you can. Allow submission of any file type. Excuse me. So one thing here to keep in mind, we can only generate originality reports, those plagiarism type reports, if it's a file that contains text in it. So if a student was to turn in one of those older types of PDFs, that's basically an image file. Or if they're actually to turn in an image file, we wouldn't be able to do an originality check on that. They could still submit it, and you could still add notes to what you see, but it can't actually run an originality report. But anything with text, so PowerPoint, Excel sheets, obviously Word docs, we can still check those. So even if you're teaching a course that isn't necessarily, English or history, if you're teaching a science course, We can check lab reports. We can check PowerPoint decks. We can do all that too. So it's up to you what you want to accept here. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at no. That's the default. Display originality reports to students. So when a student submits their paper, it is going to run an originality check. It is going to check to see if any of their content matches any sources on the internet or journal publications or other students that have turned in papers in our repository. You may want your students to be able to see what matches they have, or you may not want them to be. You have that choice here. Grade display, obviously you have the choice between grades as fractions or grades as percentage. Auto refresh grades. This is a really great choice you can make here in Moodle specifically. In other LMSs, this isn't an option. But what's great about this is you don't have to click a refresh button. Every time you open a paper and close a paper, it's going to refresh the grades. It's going to refresh submissions. Now, if you're only teaching a course of about 35 students to maybe 50, 60, 70, somewhere like that, it's great. If you have a large section of about 300 and you have to auto refresh everything every time, it may get a little slow. So just keep that in mind depending on the size of course you're teaching. But the auto refresh is really great and you'll see that in action. But you do have the ability to refresh manually in case you don't want it to do it automatically. You can, at the end of all this, set this as your default so that every time you create an assignment going forward, these choices are already picked for you and you won't have to go through these steps every time. Our next section here is grade. Here you can choose whether you want it to be point, scale, or none. Maximum grade of 100, grade categories, and grade to pass if you want to. Excuse me. Then we have our assignment parts. So you can also see you can change these. If I had 3 parts, I could make them each worth 33 points or, you know, however I want to equal 100 or whatever score you want. But you can change the parts depending on the complete grade. So you can have the overall grade at 100. You can make parts that equal 100, however you want to divvy up those points. So I'll go ahead and leave my start date, due date, and post date, but obviously this is stuff that you can change yourself. Then we have our originality report options. Allow submissions after the due date. The default is no. And if you choose yes, what that allows your students to do is only those students that haven't submitted anything can submit something late. If they've already submitted a paper, they can't resubmit. This is just to allow those students who haven't submitted at all. So I'll just go ahead and leave it at no. Report generation speed. You have 3 choices here. Generate reports immediately. Resubmissions are not allowed. Generate reports immediately. Resubmissions are allowed up until the due date. And then generate reports on the due date. So keep in mind, if you choose the second one and you allow them to resubmit, students can keep resubmitting their paper and it will overwrite that paper and recheck it and give them a new originality score. But our originality report generation for resubmissions is subject to a 24-hour delay. And the reason for this is that we were finding early on that students knew that they could submit a paper. It shows that they have a lot of matching. They would go in and just change a few words here and there, then resubmit, check their score, go back and keep doing this over and over again, and they could retweak it, pull out the thesaurus, change some things around, and it would bring their score down. So to try and counteract that, we've allowed that they can resubmit, but only every 24 hours. So if they wanted to start early, they could, but as we know, students typically wait till towards the end. So the 24-hour delay kind of has really slowed that type of behavior down. Now, kind of a best practice I like to do, especially if you're going to allow resubmissions are allowed, is to take this note, copy it, and put something to this effect up here in the summary. Because what will happen is your students will not realize that this is the case unless you post this to them. So I wish it was the case that when they submitted something or when they opened up Feedback Studio that this was told to them, but it's not currently. So if you're going to allow resubmissions, try and remember to post something like this in the summary so that they know and that they are all coming to you with problems and not understanding why it's happening. Is there any questions about that? Okay, that's good. So I'll go back down here. So next we have check against stored papers, yes or no. So this gives you the option of being able to check submissions, student submissions against any stored papers. You also have the ability to check against internet, which currently we have about 6 billion internet pages archived, and we saved them for about 6 years. So that's something that we're checking against. We also check against our journals, periodicals, and publications. You can choose all three. By default, these are all chosen as yes. You can choose no if you want to, but you have to at least have one of them chosen as yes so that we can check against something. Otherwise, an originality report won't be created. Next, you have the ability to exclude bibliography or quoted material. So as you can imagine, every time a student turns in a research paper, their originality score is going to be kind of high based on how much quoted material they have or how large their bibliography is. So if you knew that you didn't want that to count against their score, you could choose to have, you could choose no so that it does not count against their score. One thing I might suggest though is to leave it open so that it does check, because you can still check on the individual level regardless of what you choose here. And you'll see this in a little bit. When we open Feedback Studio, you have the ability on a paper-by-paper basis to exclude bibliography or exclude quoted material. So until you've played around with this enough, I would just go ahead and let it check itself, and you can always change that. If you find that it's just causing too high of scores, you can always come back and change this if you want to. But that's just my 2 cents. You also have the ability to exclude small matches. So you can come in here and choose that it is not going to count any matches that are 3 words or less. It won't count as a match. So if you find that the system might be finding, 2-word, 3-word, even up 5 words, you can exclude those if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as blank, but that is an option for you. Next, we have grade mark options. And here you have the ability to attach a rubric to this assignment. So here you can see we have a drop-down. Right now it's chosen as no rubric. I went ahead and loaded a rubric of my own, which is just called actual writing. If you have a rubric that you like to use, you can load it into our rubric manager. If I click on Launch Rubric Manager, it opens up here. You have the ability to import and export. If you're a rubric or wanted to use rubrics, but you don't have one, we do have a rubric library that you could choose from. And then you also have over here the ability to create a new rubric from scratch, duplicate a rubric, and create a new grading form. So you do have the ability to use rubrics if you're a rubric user. If you haven't been and want to be, you have that option as well. I'm going to go ahead and click Close. Then you also have the ability to enable our E-Rater grammar check. So our E-Rater is a third party that we work with that checks student papers on grammar, on mechanics, on style, on usage. And you'll see this when I open up a paper. But it automatically detects any issues, highlights them in purple, so that you can go through and maybe not want to worry about checking for spelling. I will say, though, that this is artificial intelligence, and which means that you're probably going to find yourself double checking to make sure that it's working in the first place. It does a really great job, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's something you'd feel comfortable with turning on and then not checking again. So it's up to you. And again, you can turn this off on a paper-by-paper basis if you want to. So when we jump in there, you'll be able to see this in a little better detail. The nice thing about that comes with the E-Rater grammar check, when it does hit a student with mechanics or style or spelling, it comes with a handbook, and you can choose the level handbook you want. I'm going to go ahead and choose advanced here, which allows them to open up an online handbook as well. And I'll show you that here in a bit. We also have the E-Rater dictionary, and here are the categories. So I'll go ahead and check all of them here. And that brings us to common module settings, which is, we're getting into Moodle settings. So what we've covered here is really all you need to worry about. The rest of these, I'm sure you're familiar with or might use on your own, but these don't have anything to do with Turnitin, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave them there. Any questions before I move from this screen, or anything you'd like me to go back and cover again?
I have a question. This is Christy.
Yes.
You said the max grade is 100. That's not a Moodle. Our max grades are usually higher than that. Is that a Turnitin thing?
Oh, no, I apologize. There's no max grade. That was just the default that came in.
Okay.
Yeah. No, and that was just me assuming most of the time 100 is usually what might be shot for, but you can change it to whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me, Karen?
Yes.
Okay. You said that older versions of PDF cannot be read by the software. Where's the break? What?
Oh boy, you know, that's a good question, and I'm not exactly sure. Well, it'd be one of those that you open up and you can't get into it, you can't click into it. It's just an image file. I can't remember what the actual file format is, to be honest with you. I apologize, but I can try and look that up and get back to Christy if you like.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Good question. Anything else?
We have one more, Matthias.
I have a question regarding the student documents. You keep the student documents on file after somebody submits them to you. Is this correct?
Correct.
How long do you keep them?
Well, you know, I'm not aware of a time that we get rid of them, to be honest with you. I don't know of a time that we purge. Let me just say though, if you don't want that to be the case, you can choose to not have them stored. And if you do come across a paper that's a problem, you can submit the paper ID to us and we will take it out of our system. As long as your admin, which I believe is Christy, as long as your admin okays it, we can pull papers out of the repository as well.
Where's the option to not store the paper?
Up here. Oh, where was that?
Let's see it.
Sorry about this. Oh boy, where was that?
I didn't see it here.
Yeah, you know.
Wonder if it's not in Moodle.
That could be, you know, and I apologize. I cover all the LMSs, so sometimes things get a little changed up in my head, but I'm pretty sure checking against stored paper.
No, I want to know how do you stop your papers from being stored? Because some professors don't want their papers stored in.
Yeah, you know, I will get back to you with like a screenshot or something like
I'll
that.
send an email.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
We have another question, Brian.
Okay.
Right, if I assign a Word document that has 1,000 words on it and every student submits it, those are all going to show up as matches, right?
That's correct. So, and that's one of the reasons why I know that we do have the option to not store. So if you were to create maybe an assignment that was a first draft, you wouldn't want to store that because if when they submit their final draft, it's going to match against itself. So you're correct. If everybody turns in the same papers, they're going to match.
So any instructions I give them would show up as a match in their originality report.
He's saying if they turn in a paper with instructions at the top of it, and the instructions are from paper to paper, those instructions at the top.
Right. Well, yes. So that will match if it's not an image file. If it's an actual Word doc that they could go in and actually change themselves, then it is going to think it's part of their paper and it will match. I will show you here in a little bit when we jump into Feedback Studio. You can exclude some matches, but you'd have to do that on a paper-by-paper basis, and that might not be something you'd want to do. So maybe, I don't know if an option is to put those in the summary, or some other way to get those into the students' hands. But if it is part of what they're each going to turn it in, it will definitely match. Yeah, but I'll show you once we jump into the system how you can exclude that as kind of a workaround if you wanted to. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save and return to course. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into this paper that I've already created. I can kind of walk you through our submission inbox. So up here we have 3 tabs. Here's our submission inbox, which we're going to get into in a little more detail. You have Turnitin tutors, which if you're co-teaching or if you have any GAs, you can add them as a co-teacher if you want to. That will show up as a Turnitin tutor. And then you have a list of Turnitin students. So in the beginning, right now, you'll see I only have 3 students in here. If we went to my submission inbox, I'd have much more than 3 students. The reason why only these 3 students show up is because they've turned in papers. So until a student turns in a paper and basically pings our server that they exist, they're not going to show up in this tab as a Turnitin student. So if this is a brand new course and you come into this tab and it's blank, don't worry. It just means they haven't submitted. Now, if that bothers you and you don't want to wait, you can click Enroll All Students, and it's automatically going to ping all those students against our Turnitin server and add all those students to your Turnitin Students tab. Now, and I'm trying to think of why you wouldn't want to enroll them, and maybe it's because the first few weeks you might have students dropping, coming and going. So maybe waiting until they've turned in things on their own might be a better choice for you, but you don't have to. I just didn't want anybody who gets into Turnitin students to see that list was so tiny compared to their overall list of students. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go back into submission inbox here, and you can see here's our first part. If I had multiple parts, we'd have multiple tabs. My first paper is called Global Warming. I have my start dates, due dates, post dates. As an instructor over here, I can see my rubric. On the student side, which I'm going to jump into as long as we've got time, they get to see their rubric too before they even open the paper, which is really nice. And then you also have an option to launch your Quick Mark Manager. Right now, you may not know what that is if you haven't used it. We're going to take a look at what Quick Marks are, but just keep in mind that you can launch your Quick Mark Manager from within the submission inbox. Here's my summary that I put in there so that students are aware of the 24-hour delay for resubmissions. And then also you'll notice we offer peer mark assignments. So I'm not sure if anybody there does any type of peer review work, but you do have that option. And the way you open up or start a peer mark assignment is by clicking on this little green gear. And we open that up, it opens up our peer mark assignment. I can choose to add a new peer mark assignment. I can give it a title and I can give it its own point value. Now, please keep in mind, this does not automatically generate or create a Moodle gradebook column. So if you create a peer mark assignment, you're either going to want to tally those points somewhere or create your own column that you can then go in and manually update. Unfortunately, right now, it does not create its own column. So here we've created our assignment, give it instructions, start date, due date, feedback date. We also have additional settings down here, which allows you to simply award full points if they just write a review. Maybe you don't want to have to go in there and read all those reviews, but you want to make sure they all submit something. You can award full points if you want to. Allow students to view author and reviewer names. If you don't want this to be anonymous, you can choose that. Allow students without a paper to review. So by no means, if they don't submit a paper, they don't get to review, but you can change that if you want. Allow submitters to read all papers after the start date. Allow students to read all papers and all reviews after the feedback release date. These are things you can change if you want. Papers automatically distributed by peer mark. If you choose one, it will automatically give each student a paper to review if they've submitted a paper, and then they would go through and finish off their review. Or you can allow students to select their own students to pair off with and review their work. And then you can also require self-review. Up here at the top, you have a list of peer mark questions you can choose from. You can add from a library. We have a sample library of questions. I'll go ahead and check a few here, but you can also create your own. So these are the questions students are going to have to answer when they come into review. I can delete this library if I want, and I can add my own question if I want to, or reorder them. And then lastly, if you don't want the system to pick its own, and you don't want students to pick their own, you can choose the distribution. So here you can see I can choose for Nancy to pair up with Scott. And I can choose Laura to pair up with Veronica. And you can go through and do these for your own students. I imagine that with larger classes, this is going to be more difficult, but you do have that option. Any questions about peer mark assignments?
For my peer review assignments, I have them upload, to have them review on a Word document and use reverse words track changes, but and then upload their review? Is that a viable option for this or not? Or is it just answer questions?
Well, it shows them the paper, and then they answer the questions.
Okay, so you can't upload, they can't upload a new document?
No,
Okay.
yeah, sorry, they can't do
Okay,
that.
that's fine. That's sure. All right.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Continue. I'm going to go ahead, oops, let me go ahead and Save and Continue down here as well. I'm going to go ahead and close out. And here's my peer mark assignment that just loaded for us. Okay. The other thing you'll see, if you didn't choose that auto refresh, here's your refresh button. You also have the ability to notify any non-submitters. So if you notice there's still 3 stragglers that haven't turned it in and it's the day before, you can click this button and email them and let them know they need to turn in their papers. We also have a Turn It In message inbox here in case we have any messages from Turn It In that might talk to you about any maintenance work that we need to do or anything like that. The other thing I wanted to show you that I ran through, and I apologize, is need help with Turn It In. So this is available for you and your students, and it's really great because it's live within Moodle. If you click on this and you need to create a case, or if you have any problems, you can choose our wizard. So maybe I had a problem with assignments and I need a little more information on creating assignment. It's going to give you some information that you might find helpful and might answer your question, but if it doesn't, you can then create a case. Now, this is the part that's still a little bit of an issue with Moodle that we're working on right now. If I click on No, I need more help, it brings up this blank page, and it should take you to a page where you fill out a form. The reason for this is because this is a secure HTTPS server site, and ours is not. So it's causing an issue. So you'll have to come up here to this little shield and click on that shield, click Load Unsafe Scripts, and it will bring up the form. And I know that's a problem. This is just a little workaround until we get that fixed. So please keep that in mind. So you'll come in here, you'll put in your name and your address, your school information, class ID. If it's an issue with a specific paper, please enter the paper ID and the assignment name. And you'll also notice it also captures your plugin version and the version of that plugin you're using. So it captures some information that we need that typically we don't get from users when they ask us for help. So this is a quick, easy way for us to help diagnose problems and get into tech support a lot quicker. So please keep that in mind. I'm going to go back.
I don't know what their paper ID or class ID is.
Great question. So let me go back into this paper, or into the submission inbox rather. And right down here, here's your Turn It In paper ID.
Okay.
Okay. So you want to make sure and include that if it's specific to a certain student. Also down here, you'll notice these little clouds. If you need to upload a paper for a student, you have that ability. So for Charles Doe, if I clicked on this little cloud, it's going to open up the submission file. I'm not going to go ahead and submit anything now because I'm going to jump into the student side. But this is how you'd submit for a student if maybe they can't do it themselves and they asked you to help them out. Very simple.
Hold on one second.
Typical response time for the help?
Response time for the help.
I'll say it depends on the time of the year, right? Right now, when everyone's starting, things are going to be a little slower. I think they're saying 24 to 48. But I can tell you right now, we are actively doubling our tech support. We're growing quite a bit, and we know we need to add more. So I hate to say it will last that long. Obviously, it also depends on the issue itself. If it's a quick issue with user error, that's usually something we get to within hours. If it's an issue with having to get into a Moodle account and check things out and make sure everything is integrated correctly and there aren't any bugs, that obviously takes a little longer.
And this support is available on a weekend?
It is. Okay, so you can see here these two students have submitted papers. If I click on this similarity score, or if I click on this grade, it's going to open up the next window. So either or will take you to the same window. I'll click on here, and this is what we call Feedback Studio. In the past, we just called this Turn It In. But we have changed that because now as a company called Turnitin, we have more products and we don't want to cause any confusion. So we've gone from calling it Turnitin to Feedback Studio. And to some of you that may have used Turnitin in the past, this looks different than the classic edition. This is our new upgraded format. So that's why it might look a little different to you. You can see up here, you've got a score. At any time, you can come in and change this score to whatever you'd like. I will say that sometimes we have an issue where instructors will come in, change the score, and then just close out. If you do that, you can see it's still live in the score and it will not change the score. All you have to do is click into the paper somewhere and that cements the score in there. So just keep that in mind. If you're changing scores, make sure and click somewhere else in the page so that it sets itself. Otherwise, if you close out, it won't update it. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. So over here, well, you can see right here, we've got some matches. If I scroll through, you can see different matches. This paper is 100% because I have submitted it before. Typically, you will see a 1 and a 2 and a 3 because different pieces of the paper match other places on the internet or journals or publications. But in this case, because I have submitted this paper, it is matching at 100%. And we'll get to this part here, the originality.
Correct?
What's that?
100% originality?
It's 100% similarity.
That's telling you it's 100% similar to something else. So I'll just jump to that now. So if I click on this 100, it's going to open up and it's going to show me I have 100% match to this submitted paper to our school, right? Because I've already submitted it. So you can actually see that paper from your own school if you want to. If you want to click on this double side over here, it will open up the entire paper and you can read through it to see where it matches. Now, again, this matches 100%. Typically, it would be little pieces here and there, but in this case, it's 100%. The full source, this 100% matching here, you can also drill down to all sources, which is now going to tell you every source it matches to in every piece. So you can see this matched 100% to this paper. It also matched 89% to a paper at Tulane, 18% to a paper at Brown. If I click on this, or Brown Mackey, if I click on this, it's going to show you that, yes, this matches, but because this is to another university, we can't simply show you that paper. But if you'd like, you can send a message to that instructor and ask that you could view that paper because your similarity is matching so high. So unfortunately with those, you can't just see them immediately, but if you want to, you can reach out to them and ask to view that paper. So you can see my paper matched where I went, I created this paper by simply just pulling random paragraphs off the internet and just slamming them into a paper. So you can see 18% already matched someone else's paper who likely did the same thing.
Wow.
The same thing here to the University of the South Pacific, 18% there, same to CSU San Francisco. And if we scroll down, you'll also start to see links, and you'll also start to see publications and journals and all the matches there as well. And if you click on it, it'll open up this window within the context of that journal and the pieces that I pulled out from that publication. Now, this part here is filters and settings. So like I mentioned before, if you don't want to exclude quotes or bibliography across the entire assignment, you can come to each paper and you can choose to exclude quotes and bibliography. And you'll see this score start to drop because you've excluded those. And you can also exclude smaller matches, such as 2 or 3 word matches or percentage, if you want to. Okay, back to this all sources. I forgot to show this to you. But if we wanted to exclude sources, you can click on, oops, I'm sorry, I did that too quickly. Exclude sources down here at the bottom. And you can choose to exclude these sources. So the gentleman who had asked about that piece of the paper that he includes with instructions, this might be your opportunity to go in and exclude that match so that it doesn't count against them. Now keep in mind that would almost need to be done paper by paper, but I'm sure you'll be reading through each paper anyhow. So if you remember to go in and exclude that match, that will probably give you a more truer score.
But But also you can tell your students, hey, it's gonna match, it's gonna be a higher
Right,
percentage of originality, just don't worry about it.
right, exactly, exactly. And it'll give you a percentage. So you'll know that if typically in that paper, if it's a 1,000-word paper, it's going to match at 18%, you can automatically in your head just say, okay, I'm going to drop this 18% for each student, that type of workaround. And then lastly, this excluded source down here is going to show us if I've excluded anything, it will list out those resources that I've excluded. Any questions about any of the matching? Okay, now I'm going to go a little quicker here because we're starting to run out of time. So I apologize, but I'm going to start to hustle. So up here at the top here is our Quick Marks Manager. These are the quick marks that allow you to mark up a page like this. You can drag and drop your most commonly used citations, improper citations, spelling, and move these around the page. If a student clicks on it, it will open up and explain that to them. And if you want to assign this quick mark rubric criteria based on, I don't know, word choice, it will add that to your rubric. As every time you use it, it will add it as criterion that counts against that rubric. You can add your own comment if you want to, and you can even include links in there if you want to link out to your website, or maybe a common website you like them to go view based on these different types of issues. If you actually click into the paper, you can leave an inline text. You can leave a comment. And then I would leave a website. If you find that you're leaving the same comment over and over again, you can convert this to a quick mark and it will become one of your items over here on the right that you can simply drag and drop from there on. So you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel every single time. And then lastly, we also have another link to quick marks. I'm not exactly sure why someone might choose this over this, but it's up to you. Some people prefer another way of doing things. You also have the ability to highlight inside, and you can strike through if you want to. You can highlight and leave a comment. And you can highlight and leave a quick mark just for that highlight. And you can choose the color that you want it to highlight, and then leave them a note for it. Okay? You also have the ability, I'm not going to get into it because of time, the ability to go in and create your own quick mark sets. So I can create a set called My Set and add all my favorite quick marks to it. You can see you do have a library that you can choose from that will give you various quick marks. But I like the idea of creating your own set and adding your own. Then you don't have to keep moving through all these. Next, you have the option to leave a feedback voice comment of up to 3 minutes. And you can leave a text comment. Here is your rubric. This is the rubric I chose. As you can see down here, there's an explanation for these rubric pieces. You can use a sliding scale. And then you can click Apply to Grade, and it's going to change your grade. Now, it's not going to set this in stone, so maybe 80% is good, but you thought really it's more than 82. You can still come back and change it, but maybe it gives you a jumping off point. If you like to see the rubric as a whole rather than the sliders, you can expand it open. Oh, can you not see that?
Yeah, no, we can't
No?
see.
Okay, well, let me just say, if you click this button, it will expand open into that rubric box view that has the grid and the explanations, and you can choose your rubric grades in there as well. Again, I know I only have like 8 minutes, so I don't want to start closing things out and taking up too much time. But when you get a chance, click on this button here, and it will open up the entire rubric, and you can simply choose boxes and apply that to your score if you want to.
And how does this get submitted back to the student?
So when a student, once you've done this and you just close out of this paper, that student can now see when they log in, they'll see that same originality report score. If they click on it, this all opens up for them. And I can show you that really quick here in a second too. Let me go through this really quickly. Here's your ETS rater. If I choose to click on that, now you can see all these purple pieces jumping on, right? That's the ETS rater coming in to tell them to proofread. And all these items here. You can come in here and dismiss them if you want, or you can say, I simply don't want it to tell me about grammar or mechanics, and you can uncheck them. Okay? The ETS rater will show up in purple. If they click it, they can then view the handbook, and that's going to open up a new page that's going to take them to that handbook. Okay? Lastly, down here, you have a couple more buttons. You can download a digital receipt for that student or their originally submitted file. But the other thing I'll show you, which I think is even better, is this current view. And the student can click on this on their side as well. If they open up current view, it's going to prepare a download for them. Oops, let me do that one more time here. One second, just takes a second here. Now, can you see this?
Yes.
Great. So this is the current view. And you can see it creates a report for them. Here's their time stamps, time submitted, submission IDs. Here's everything they saw and that you put in. This is something they can print up if they need to. As they scroll through, they'll see their scores. They will also see a list of all those matches. They will see all of your comments, all of the ETS rater comments, your rubric, and the parts that you chose for that rubric for them. So this is a great paper that they can print up and take to a writing lab or take to a tutor, that they can actually know exactly where this instructor was coming from with this grade to help that student out.
With respect to the improper citation, you have it checked for a particular format such as APA.
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing that. I apologize.
Can you check for a particular citation, MLA, APA, CB, whatever?
That's a good question. I'm going to have to check on that. I assume it can, but to be honest with you, I'm not sure if it checks against improper, and I know there's nowhere to say that I want this to be APA, and if it's not, check against that. So I know that doesn't exist, but I'll ask about that also to see if we have any plans for that.
Okay.
Very good question. Any other questions?
Yes, in the past, if I just happen to have a student's paper that, let's just say, wasn't submitted as an assignment, but I wanted to check it, I would have to, in the old version, have to go in, create a dummy assignment. I uploaded the student's paper and then got the report. Is there a more efficient way to do that?
So it's not a current assignment?
It's not a current assignment. I just happen to have it submitted to me, let's say, independent study or something.
She's got an independent study student who's just submitting something to her. There's not an assignment created in Moodle for it. Is there any way to submit it to turn it in?
Sure, and that's a great question. I think, and I'm not sure, when you get a brand new Moodle course, do you also get a student account that goes along with it that you can jump into? That might be the account you want to submit through.
No, you don't get a student account.
Okay. I'll have to check on that. I know we have that in our online product. It's called Quick Submit. But when it comes to LMS integration, not everything translates. But I will check on that. The workaround, I would say you're correct, would have to have a dummy account that you have.
If she was to go straight to the Turnitin website, is there a way to do it?
No, not really. Well,
it all has to be submitted through Moodle.
You do have an account in our native environment. The only reason I hesitate to say that is because confusion happens when you start messing with things in the native environment compared to the Moodle environment. Things don't always go back and forth. So if you make changes here, you may not see them there. And I hate to start people down that path. Having said that, you should have the ability to log into your native account and do a quick submit. But I believe that's something you Christy, have to allow through your admin account is to allow quick submits.
Okay.
I hate to show that, especially in trainings like this, because it adds a whole nother layer of confusion of where to go. But if that's a big issue and you think getting a dummy account in Moodle to submit those would be too problematic, we can work on that. But I would say to keep things simple, to try and keep things in Moodle as much as you can. That's just my two cents.
We have dummy student accounts, we just don't, I mean, and I give them to professors all the time, we don't automatically do that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Okay, hold on one second, Ryan.
Yeah, is it possible for a student to send in their paper to determine like the way the professor can see that this is from to learning, this is from this 18% from.
What do the student, they want to see what
Students
this
also do the same.
beforehand, before the
Yeah,
assessment?
beforehand, so that at least they will have an idea that the paper they are submitting, the professor also can see that what they are submitting is plagiarized.
Yes, if you allow submission, if they submit it before the due date and you allow them to submit it for the due date and they submit it 24 hours in advance, they can see everything you see, all of the matches, then they can go in and make the edits and then submit if you'd like them to. And I can show you how to do that. Okay. Any other questions, you guys?
Yeah.
I know this is fast.
Does your service access some of the sites like Course Hero, alleged study sites where people buy papers from?
Yeah, well, if it's ever been submitted and it's in our repository, it will check against those. If it's somewhere on the internet, it will check against that. If it's a brand new paper that hasn't been submitted, then obviously we wouldn't.
Do you check against submission sites, like we're subscription sites? I mean,
Oh boy, not that I'm aware of. We would have to have access to that. Now, I will say that we have access to most all publisher content. So if that was something that was accessible through their material, then we would. But off the top of my head, I just wouldn't know without knowing specifically what it is.
Kathleen.
Yeah, I'm still a little confused. We don't need to have a sign-on account. We don't have to have an account.
So we personally do not need a Turnitin sign-on account. Everything goes to Moodle.
Right. And our students don't need anything like that.
He's showing you the students. He's now in as a student right now. So you're seeing what the student sees.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry, I was just trying to move through this quickly so that I could show you before you guys got to go. When the student first comes in, they're going to have to accept this student agreement. It's just a one-time thing to agree. I just left it up there because I wanted to be able to show you. Once they do that, they can now submit. So here is my student side. I can see my digital receipt. If I'm a student, I can click on my similarity report and it's going to open it up, and you'll see it looks very similar to the instructor side, just a lot less information. But here's where I can see all my feedbacks. I didn't mark up ands. It was someone else's. But if I did, you could leave feedback. They would see everything. Here's their score. They can see all the same matching and sources. Here's where they would choose that current view report so that they can create that report that we just saw. You can see it'll be pretty much exactly what you see, except they won't see that rubric piece. And they won't see that other piece as well for submitting things as an instructor. Now, as a student, if I go back to this and I go back, I'm sorry, I got to move this. I got a screen in my way. If I go back to my course, as a student, I can come into this assignment we just created, and I can submit my paper. I'll just call this draft. I will choose a file from my desktop here. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and click upload this file. It is going to give me 3 little check marks to know that, let me know that I've done it correctly. Oops, sorry. Now I add my submission. Here's my digital receipt. Oops, I keep moving these windows around, sorry. And there's my submission. Now this can take anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, depending on how busy the servers are. But as soon as this is ready, it will choose a color. Most likely it will be red because it'll match 100% because it's that same paper. But here's their paper ID, their time submitted. Here's that rubric. If they want to open that up so they can take a look at what the rubric is that you've added before they start the paper, they can. And that's basically it for the student side. That's how they submit a paper. When they want to see everything, they can come back in and click on the similarity report.
How do you save a copy of the originality report?
How do you save a copy? Can the student easily save a copy of that originality report?
Yeah, so I would say the best way would probably, oops, 1 second here. The best would be to create one of these current view reports.
Uh-huh.
And then they can save this. They can print it up. It's a PDF that's theirs.
It's just a PDF, save it like any normal PDF.
Yeah. Now, if they wanted to, and this goes for instructors as well, they can download that original paper. Obviously, they'd already have it, but as an instructor, you can download that original paper as well.
Is there a way to do that in batches instead of individually?
Not in Moodle currently. But that is something we do in our native where you could load a zip file or you could load multiple papers at once. But that currently is not available in Moodle that I'm aware of, but I will check on that.
So you mean like download all of them?
Yeah, batch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't. And y'all, as you guys play with this, and as you guys come up with stuff, let me know. Talk to me, and I will talk to Ryan. And
Right.
I'm sure there's going to be things that come up. I mean, this is all very new to me. I mean, I think once we get used to it, it's going to become second nature. But right now, it's all new. So you might want to just try one time. Yes.
So I will tell you, I've used it a lot, and one of the best things ever was every paper a student submits, they also submit to me their originality report. So by the time I ever get it, it's pretty clean. There's a little effort on my part.
That's good. Okay, we have to wrap up, Ryan. I'm so sorry because we have another group coming in here.
No, absolutely. I'm sorry I had to go so quickly at the end.
No, that's fine. We understand. And next time I'll know